Great. Well, thank you, and I'm very thrilled to be with you all today. Today, I'm going to speak about PEPFAR and the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, our investments in transgender people for HIV epidemic control. Um, my presentation, I'm going to give a bit of background on PEPFAR and USAID and our approach to epidemic control. Then I'm going to share some data and some programs, program models where we are investing more in transgender programming. And then I'm going to close with a call to action. So for those of you that don't know, PEPFAR is a US government program. It's the Presidential Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief. There are currently we operate in about 40 different countries. We call them operating units, and that some of them are regions. But there are 5 US agencies that implement. We're coordinated by something called the OGAC, the Office of Global AIDS Coordination and Health Diplomacy, but it's at the State Department. And just for context, PEPFAR has about $5.4 billion annually that's given out to all these countries and or operating units. Plus, we give about 1.5 billion to the Global Fund, and then we give about 45 million to multilateral agencies, most of that being UNAIDS. But with PEPFAR, I wanted to mention this. We follow the UNAIDS goal of 95, 95, 95 around. The progress within PEPFAR is that we're reaching that goal of 95% folks identified, cases identified, 95% of those folks on treatment, and 95% of those folks virally suppressed. And it's important because it speaks to the struggle we often have with supporting hormone replacement therapy, in that we have to show that that HRT actually impacts one of those 3 goals in order for the key decision makers at PEPFAR to be supportive. So I think all of you know, but in the HIV space, we call folks key populations. These are populations that are higher risk. This data is from Bridging the Gaps from AIDS funds, but it speaks to how key pops of being gay men and other men who have sex with men, being sex workers, being transgender people, and being people who inject drugs, a much higher risk. You can see trans folks are 12 times more likely to be infected with HIV than the general population, but yet only account for 0.06% of funding. Quite a challenge, and so something we at PEPFAR are seriously working about. How do we change that metric? So at USAID now, where I work in Washington, but I advise a number of countries. We also really focus on a community strategy. Our vision for what that means is that communities are driving these efforts, KP, or in the case of trans communities, that organizations we work with need to be competent to work with these populations, either led by the populations or working with groups that are trusted organizations, where KP leadership is valued. We also have a comprehensive model, which I'll get to in a bit. We call it differentiated service delivery models, focus on sustainability, making sure that these organizations, maybe they're led by trans folks, have the capacity. It's another piece around organizational capacity, but also funding and also different streams of funding. We also work on monitoring, making sure that they're using data to show progress, but also more so to use the data to inform the program. So it's reporting up, but it's also reporting down, using the data to say what's working and how do we adapt the program to be more impactful. So this is this concept of just differentiated service delivery models. So in the past, we'd had this model where we had peer educators or community folks sort of identifying folks, taking them to an ART site to be linked to treatment, and then maybe working with them to make sure that they're on treatment. Whereas this newer model sort of recognizes the power of community and how it's important that ART site is good, a clinic, a hospital, but also why can't we have treatment in community sites, especially for stable clients? So in drop-in centers, or we call them one-stop shops. Other pieces of this are about same-day initiation. Someone tests positive, we put them on treatment right away. or maybe a community-based treatment initiation. If maybe folks have a hard time getting to the clinic, they can become a group of 10 people, and one of them goes to the clinic to get the treatment for everyone. We're also focusing a lot on things like multi-month dispensing, of helping folks get their treatment over a 3-month period or a 6-month period supply, so they don't have to be going back to the clinic. Once again, making things easier, very community-driven. So that's sort of the model that we're using at PEPFAR and specifically USAID. But I want to focus now a bit on trans folks and on programming that exists and the data for trans folks. And so the question is, do we count? And I think the answer for PEPFAR is yes, somewhat. There's clearly been a trend within PEPFAR for additional funding and programming for trans people. And so this first slide is data around the key indicators that we use within PEPFAR. The first being KP-Prev or KP prevention. So this speaks to how many people in FY21 Q2, which would be, that would be January to March of 2021, how many people received prevention services? And this is specifically for transgender folks. This is TX-Cur, so this is currently how many people are in treatment, and this is for Q3, so this is as of July 2021. You can see we had a little more than 5,600 trans folks on treatment. The key thing I want to show here is there's a positive trend that's been happening, which is quite good. And this also speaks to our FY fiscal year 21, which ended October 1st. But you can see in Q3, which is the latest data I have, which ended in July, we actually had overachieved on the number of trans people we wanted to see on treatment. We're very close to our testing positive or case finding targets, and we did achieve that in Q4. Just the data hasn't come out fully yet. So this is trend data around prevention services compared to the other 3 key populations of female sex workers, men who have sex with men, people who inject drugs, and then trans folks. And so this just shows you that, you know, our trans programming is the smallest of these 3 populations, but it also reflects size estimates of how large trans populations are. This, I think, slide is you know, this is our TX-Cur. This is the number of people on treatment. Once again, you can see a pretty strong progress here in terms of continuing going forward, which is a good thing. Sometimes you lose clients, so you're getting new folks, but then losing them, lost to follow-up. And so I think what this is showing is that positive trend means we're not losing clients. It's a key piece of what PEPFAR works on. But currently, over 5,500 people, trans people, are on treatment with PEPFAR support. I think that major increase we're seeing, though, this is specific to sub-Saharan Africa, which to me is pretty impressive, that as of initial investments last year, 2019, even during COVID, it's a pretty substantial gain. So this is prevention of reaching in Q4 of last year, over 16,000, that dropped down a little bit. But anyway, this is a key factor in why we're doing better on trans programming. And I think the bulk of PEPFAR is supported in Africa, and so this is very exciting. This is specifically for Africa, trans folks that are on treatment. Once again, a positive trend. And then my final slide, this is around PrEP, and you can see a very impressive uptick of PrEP as well. You know, the key part of this session really was about gender affirming care and hormone replacement therapy. So I wanted to share that, you know, with PEPFAR, by legislation, you know, PEPFAR is a law. It's passed by our Congress. It's an appropriation then. It focuses much more on HIV outcomes and not much more. So that testing, treatment, retention. And so we call these things wraparound services. So things that are needed really to help folks be retained or get into services like stigma, discrimination, violence, like STI treatment, family planning, mental health services, hormone replacement therapy. It's a very bit of a struggle to get resources to do this because it's not seen as a direct impact on getting people tested, treated, and on and retained and virally suppressed. There's also, lack of data that links that. We've got some good data. We've got more coming around hormone replacement therapy and how it is impacting those 95 outcomes. But I have very little of that in Asia, even less so in Africa, Latin America. Those are pieces we at PEPFAR, but others need to invest in the research. We do, though, have formal hormone replacement therapy programming in Burma, in Laos, in South Africa, Vietnam, and Thailand, which is not on this list. And so I'm going to share a few of those models. This is a model from Vietnam called Healthy Markets. The key to the success here is that trans organizations were involved very much in the delivery of services, but you can see the comprehensive nature from, they do home testing and within clinics, they've got a treatment program, condoms and lubricant, but here you've got your gender affirming care, STI, mental health. This is all part of their program. They do some referral for advanced cases, but it's very much recognizing where people are at and meeting their immediate needs. And so this is a key piece that happened for them during COVID is they shifted a lot more to virtual programming and also a lot more on care navigation of helping have peer navigators, a friend who's helping you through the system. This is a model from South Africa with Wits RHI. It really has a program that engages a lot of trans folks in their own care, around mental health, around gender-based violence. They use netball matches to attract communities, to focus on human rights awareness and mobilize communities. Key piece they have is something called Thule's Hub. It's an online platform promoting health information, but also employment readiness and social cohesion. They are integrating hormone provision into HIV services, which is unique and new for Africa. It's our first PEPFAR supported program in Africa around hormone therapy. They also have a program called REACT, which many of you may know, but it's a program to document human rights, but it starts with responding to the needs of gender-based violence, and really working with people to help them meet their needs if they've been a survivor of violence, and then document that and use that for advocacy purposes. Another program in Thailand, this is the Tangerine Clinic with formerly the Thai Red Cross or IHRI these days. But this is, I think, a super model of where trans folks came together themselves, set up a clinic, set up a whole program. It's not just a clinic, they're reaching into the community with peer educators, with peer navigators, but they are offering hormone services on a sliding scale. It can be free, but as a set of folks have resources, they accept medical aids or insurance. It's a really good model. They're actually expanding the Lao program, the Burma program are based on what actually the successes in this program in Thailand. So I kind of want to close though with really looking at some opportunities that exist. And I do work for the US government, and we have a new administration, the Biden administration, who really in the second week of their administration issued a memorandum on advancing the rights of LGBTQ and intersex persons around the world. We also had the special session of the United Nations in June, the Yogyakarta Principles. There's a lot going on right now around human rights, and I feel like there's an opportunity we have on the global stage around funding from the US government, from UN, from other governments, really pushing an agenda that links human rights to health. Part of that also really speaks to how I need your help in this cause. And so there's a key thing that needs to happen around advocacy. PEPFAR really listens to communities. There are many spaces and inputs where communities can give feedback and input to what the programs should be. And so I work a lot with communities, with K-pop, with trans communities. My key message is don't be afraid to ask for what you need. You all know what you want, or you all know what you need. And really that needs to be based on the lived realities of trans people. And so in general, we need to advocate for gender affirming care. And at least I work with the Nigeria program. We're currently working on at least training folks around hormone therapy or hormone replacement therapies, at least have some referral. But how do we work to actually get support, some funding to help support folks? We need greater Chi inclusion in all of PEPFAR programming. We have a program for adolescent girls and young women called Dreams. That should be more inclusive. Currently, it's just working with cis girls and women. All are welcome, but it's not focused on TG. It needs to change. Our programming for men needs to be more inclusive of trans men. It's currently just for cis men. So there's a whole advocacy component that needs to happen. There's also a research component that needs to happen. It's something PEPFAR does. We don't fund a lot of research anymore. We do have sister agencies in the US government that we're working with. But really, what we need is this data that links hormone therapy to those 95, the outcomes. Yeah. Also the cost effectiveness of this. If we can get data around that, those are the pieces that my decision makers listen to. And then finally, just need to document success and share that success that's out there. And so, tell that story, those successes, but also those challenges. Those are key pieces that we need with PEPFAR. And so that's my presentation. Appreciate your time. Left my email address. Would love to hear from folks if folks have more to add or have programming you'd like to add. So thank you very much.